Namaste. Welcome to the Festival of Bharat. I am Kamal Madi Shetty, your host for today. Today we have with us a very special guest, and it is my honor and privilege to welcome him. We have with us Sri Madhukar Nath Ji, or more popularly known as Sri MG. He is a spiritual guide, an educationist, a social reformer, author, and a speaker. He was born into a Muslim family in 1949 in Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. His transformational journey from a young boy to a living yogi is a fascinating story symbolized by single-minded discipline and dedication. He heads the Satsang Foundation, and over the decades, his efforts have given rise to many initiatives that include the Satsang Vidyalaya, the Satsang Rural School, People Groove School, Satsang Swasth Kendra, Manav Ekta Mission, among several others. He completed the famous Walk of Hope in 2015 and 16, a 15-month-long journey for peace and harmony from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, spanning 7,500 kilometers. He also did another such walk in Europe in the year 2017. His message has always been to nurture the innate goodness in every human being. Namaste, Sri MG. Thank you so much for joining us at the Festival of Bharat.
Namaste. Thank you for inviting me. I have seen some of your videos, and I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you, Pranam, sir. Sir, I want to begin, first of all, with your life story. When you were just 19, now you embarked on a journey to the Himalayas, seeking a true master that you found in the form of Maheshwarnath Babaji. Now, after traveling extensively through the Himalayas with your teacher for a few years, you were then encouraged to return to the plains to start a family and to prepare for your life's mission. Now, you have described all of this in your autobiography, Apprenticed to a Himalayan Master, which I strongly recommend to everyone who is watching this. For the benefit of our viewers, sir, both Indian and those watching globally, could you please share what were some of the most important inflection points in your spiritual journey right from the beginning in your childhood, sir?
Yes. Like every child, I was also born with a certain orientation. We see the child being born, and we see that it looks the same, tries to walk, tries to crawl, tries to walk, then tries to talk. But deep down, there is an orientation, which now I have come to understand, comes from your past influences. Otherwise, I cannot explain the fact that in my childhood, by the age of, let's say, 4 or 5, whenever I looked at the clouds, I thought that there were snow-clad mountains. Now, in Trivandrum, in Kerala, where I was born, there is no snow-clad mountain to be seen, nor have I seen any pictures of a snow-clad mountain. So, whenever I sat quietly and looked at the clouds, I thought these were some mountains with clouds. Well, that made me want to look at some pictures of the Himalayas. Actually, it's very funny. Somebody showed me a picture of the Swiss Alps, and I looked at it in a comic book. And I said, no, this is not the mountain. So, you see, every child has that. But what happens is the way we are upbringing and the way we are oriented by parents and society, we lose that track of our original understanding. Yeah. For instance, little children play with what parents think are imaginary playmates. My understanding, they are not imaginary playmates. They actually are playing with something that you cannot see. Then as they grow up, they're told and brainwashed that, oh, these are imaginary things. And so the imagination is dead and gone, and you have a person who has no imagination. Now the understanding now is that the imagination is one of the most important faculties that the human being has. Even Einstein said imagination is more important than intelligence. In Sanskrit, it's called Sankalpa Shakti. It's very important to note that the human being, among all other mammals and animals and others, has the unique capacity for sankalpa. Animals are very intelligent. Sankalpa is not there. And this sankalpa is a small part of the sankalpa of the Supreme Being, who has, with the sankalpa, created this entire universe. And therefore, it can collapse at any time. So this is how it began. And then at the age of 9, I had my first meeting with one who later on became my master, Maheshwarnath Babaji. And at that time, I did not know that it was Maheshwarnath Babaji. While playing in the backyard of my house, the details are in the autobiography, I saw a tall man with matted hair and rudrakshas. I didn't even know they were rudrakshas. And a kamandalu, I did not know. I've never seen a kamandalu. Bare-bodied in the traditional yogic style, wearing a white loincloth, standing under the jackfruit tree. And what I started with was kind of related to what he said when he saw me. He beckoned me to come forward. And the first question he asked me was, "Kuch yaad aaya?" I didn't know anything. I said, "Kuch nahi yaad aaya." I spoke in Hindi because we used to speak Urdu at home, even though we were born and brought up in Kerala. So then he put his hand on my head and said, "Samay hone par sab theek ho jayega." And then he said, "Wapas jao." So I started walking back. And then when I turned back and looked, he was not there. It's not a vision. Huh? I think I personally know that he actually came. It's not a vision. Nor at that age was I under the influence of any narcotic. So there I was. And from that day, my spiritual life actually started. Right. Although I was not aware of it, I didn't know who it was. But something was given to me by the touch. Memories were awakened. And that led me to march forward. Even though I studied till the age of 19 in different subjects in colleges, school, and so on, most of the time I was not going to school. I was going to the public library, reading books. I started actually with the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. I was in an English medium school, so it was not much of a problem. And various other texts, Brahma Sutra. I think by the age of 19, theoretically, I must have done everything. I attribute it to that wonderful touch on my head at the age of 9 or 8.5. And then at that age, 19, I thought that I was kind of shut up in a cage. Not because my parents were very orthodox or wanted me to follow a certain, no, it's not that. I felt that I must be on my own. I must free myself from this cage. It was actually quite a luxurious cage, golden cage. Money-wise, we had no problem. But a cage can be golden or it can be wooden. It's the same. It's a cage, right? You can't stretch your wings. So I quietly, and I'm the only son and I'm the oldest, supposed to take over the building business. I just disappeared one day. Otherwise, they won't let me go. You know how it is. Come from a different community. They can't understand what's going on. So I just ran away. No Google Maps. Read all the guides, railway guides. Gathered some money, part of pocket money, part of some examination fees. And took a train. After many adventures, walking from Rishikesh to Haridwar, I reached Badrinath. And there, after a great deal of ordeals and things, lot of discouragements from various people, I was on the verge of ending my life because I thought, I have burnt my bridges, I can't go back, and I don't see anything. I was almost a yoga bhrashta as described in the Bhagavad Gita. Almost. When I again went to Vyasa Gufa and saw my master again, Maheshwara Babaji. And the first statement he made was "Ghum phir ke phir hamare paas pahunch gaye." And I touched his feet and I said, "Hamesha hum aapko chhod ke nahi jayenge." And he laughed and he said, "Dekha jayega." This was the beginning, second stage of my spiritual life. Should I stop here? And you have another question to ask?
Yes, sir. I wanted to also understand what transpired then after that, in terms of your travels in the Himalayas, and what made you come back to, the plains, and so to say, and then start the various initiatives that you have started.
Staying with, although I had some idea already theoretically about various things, yoga, Vedanta. When I say Vedanta, it doesn't mean only one kind of Vedanta, okay? Some people, the moment you say Vedanta, they think only of Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, which is okay. I mean, that's great. He was one of the greatest teachers that we had in this country. But there are many kinds of Vedanta. It sometimes surprises me that when I speak on Vedanta in India, it's sad. Nobody has asked me the question which was asked when I was speaking in Harvard some years ago. Its topic was Vedanta. One professor who's white, I don't want to name him, he likes to be quiet. And he stood up and asked me, after 10 minutes of my talk, 3 times you have said Vedanta in this talk. Which Vedanta are you talking about? Advaita Vedanta of Shankara? Vishishta Advaita of Ramanuja? Or the Dvaita Vedanta of Madhva? Or the Shuddha Advaita of Vallabhacharya? What is your opinion on this? Which is the Vedanta you're talking?
Yeah.
See, what I'm trying, of course, we had a chat and I described to him. But what I'm saying is, it's unfortunate that if you go to Berlin, you have 3 chairs for Sanskrit. How many chairs for Sanskrit do you have in our country?
Yeah.
Is that a sad state or is there something you can do about it? Okay, anyway. So, even though I had all this theoretical understanding, it was after meeting Maheshwaranath Babaji and having these dialogues with him. He did not have a textbook in his hand because textbooks were known to him, all textbooks. Even though he came from the Natha Sampradaya, Maheshwaranath, and he wore those kundalis on his ear, his knowledge of Hindu system of thought and Adhyatmic understanding was wide. There was no subject he did not know about. So these dialogues for 2.5 to 3 years with him, sometimes on the banks of the Ganga, sometimes sitting on a mountain, sometimes in an old hermitage which was abandoned, walking with him, seeing how he dealt with people, all this contributed to my growth. And at one point, while we were living in the Charan Paduka, which is the mountains behind Badrinath temple, he also gave me some experiences which has to do with the Shakti energy which is in us. After doing all that, I would say, in a way, we have lived in caves, we have lived in various places. Once he sent me to the Smashan in Banaras. He said, get rid of your fear. So, after all this, I thought now I have come to a certain state in my spiritual progress. Now what I have to do is deepen it. And the only way to deepen it, I thought, was to stay here, walk around the Himalayas, beautiful place, food. When you're hungry, it comes somehow. And enjoy the waters of the Ganga. Now, the lower part of the Ganga is also clear somewhat. Those days it was terrible. But upper part, always clear. Beautiful waters, fresh water. That was when Babaji suddenly dropped a bomb and said, go back. He said, your plan in this life, because you have seen sannyas, you have seen enough in your past. Your plan in this life is to live the life of a grahastha. I said, but if I lead a life, I actually told him, Papas kichad mein nahi phasna hai. And he said, kichad mat kaho. ये तुम्हारी धर्म भूमि का, ये तुम्हारा कुरुक्षेत्र है. He said, go back to the plains, get married. I said, get married. He said, show me one rishi in the ancient Vedic times who was not married, who was not a grahastha, including Vishwamitra. Well, he was not a grahastha, but he did have contacts. You know, the famous stories of Menaka and so on. So he said, Yajnavalkya, one of the very essence of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, is Yajnavalkya's advice to Maitri, his wife. Where he says, oh Maitri, when you love your child, you love the self inside, not the child. When you love me, you don't love your husband, you love the self which is within. So, so he said, you have to do it. He said, this is the time for people to go out and do it. He said, can you beat Swami Vivekananda? Can you become a greater sannyasi than that? Be a householder, that's your job now. And people will listen to you because you come from a certain background and they would wonder, how did this guy change? So he actually sent me back. I would not have come. I was really, really reluctant. But there was one caveat here. He said, don't teach. Till I give you a green signal, shut your mouth. You have any experiences, keep it to yourself. So till I was 40, age of 40. By then I had 2 kids. My wife is from Udupi. She's a Konkani Saraswat from Udupi. I married her because I could not have married into a community which would oppose my moving in the spiritual field. And I wouldn't say that she is very religious. She's innately, there is something, they're simple, not interested in things, happy, and a good person. Okay. So now, therefore I came, I settled down and got married. At the age of 40, I saw something in my mind. It's either a dream or a trance, can't say, that there was a green signal for me to teach. And still I was thinking, where will I go and speak? Who's interested? And then the chance came and somebody invited me to the Theosophical Society in Bangalore just to talk about my Himalayan trip. And from there it started. Today, I'm trying to find some time to be free because I need to write some more books and so on, but it's kind of busy. And all I reflect is all that I have studied in 2.5 years in experience when I was with Maheshwarnath Babaji. Nothing has been subtracted and nothing has been added to it. What I'm trying to say that there are such great yogis. They may be known or they may be unknown. They are the essence and crux of our great civilization called Sanatana Dharma. And it is the seeds that they plant that will lead to a resurgent India. This is what is required. Because, okay, sorry. No, you have to ask me.
Absolutely, sir. It is, you've mentioned, I mean, you've taken us through your journey so beautifully, Guruji, that and you mentioned how there have been, I mean, we have been, our civilization has been the place where such great yogis have walked this part of the world and around the world. But when we look at yoga today, now yoga obviously it's becoming increasingly popular globally, but we also see a very reductionist and a very narrow understanding of yoga being propagated a lot. For example, yoga is it's like projected as some form of an exercise, like maybe dance or Zumba, and how problematic are such characterizations? And can you share with the youth in particular who are watching this about the need to realize that yoga is much more than just limited to asanas?
I have to say this. Yoga is a word which, as you said just now, while I'm happy that there is this International Yoga Day, thanks to various people who have initiated the process, and the United Nations also for taking up the advice given by the Prime Minister of India. Nobody said that before that to the UN. However, with all this Yoga Day and so on that's going on, people practice asanas. And yoga is not only asanas. You have to just go back to the Bhagavad Gita. Every chapter is called a yoga.
Right.
From Arjuna Vishada Yoga, first chapter, till the last chapter, which is Jnana Vijnana Yoga, or Sannyas Yoga, sorry. All the chapters have been described as yoga. So what could yoga actually be? It's an ancient science. Believe me, it's not, yoga didn't come into being with Patanjali.
Right.
Of course, Patanjali is the founder of the Yoga Darshana. Of the 6 darshanas, the last one is the Yoga Darshana. It is a modification in some way of the Sankhya system of Kapila, the ancient sage Kapila, who is so important that Krishna declares in the Gita, among the sages, Munis, I am Kapila. And yoga is 70% derived from Sankhya. And the Vedantists also use most of the words which have come from Sankhya, like gunas, samadhi. All these come from Sankhya. And it's a very scientific way of life. Sankhya in mathematics would mean sum, figure, Sankhya, right? So, yoga, therefore, if you go back to the Krishna Yajurveda, it contains 20 to 21 yoga Upanishads. The Upanishads are always at the end of the Samhita portions, which is why they are called Vedanta. Vedanta and the Samhita portion. So the Yoga Upanishads come as early as Krishna Yajurveda. And Yajurveda is only the second Veda, Rig Veda, Yajurveda. Right. So this ancient science has been with us for several thousand years. And it's not merely the asanas and the pranayams and the courses for corporate improvement, which have been, it's all fine. Yeah. It has its own impact. It has its own use. But that's not the essence of yoga. In the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, called Bhakti Yoga, one of the few chapters in the Gita which starts with Arjuna Vovacha instead of Sri Bhagavan Vacha. Right? Arjuna has a question. Arjuna says, I'm saying this because you asked me about yoga. Yes. Arjuna says that some say that those who meditate upon the supreme, formless, nirmal almost unreachable, abstract, supreme Brahman, they are the great yogis. Some say that those who worship you as you are in your beauteous form are yogis. According to you, I'm ready to accept if you say. Because by then all his so-called logical structure has been demolished. Because you must remember that the previous two chapters, one is the chapter 10, where Krishna suddenly changes his record from being a dialogue between two friends and says, among the mountains I am Meru. Among the Muni, Arjuna is for a second wonderstruck. This guy, he's a good friend, brother-in-law, same age, talking to me like you and me talking together. And then suddenly he turns and says, I am this, I am that, wondering what is happening. So his so-called logic built on the inputs from the Indriyas is broken. And then comes the 11th chapter, Vishwarupa Darsana. Suddenly he sees that this man sitting in front of me driving the chariot envelops the entire universe and all the gods are coming out from him. Then Bhakti Yoga is introduced. Other people ask why it took so long to introduce Bhakti Yoga. So this is Arjuna's question. Who among them are the greatest of yogis? Beautiful. Krishna in his own way, diplomatic way, says it doesn't matter how you worship the Supreme Being. Great rishis worshipped it as abstract Brahman, fine, no problem. Some bhaktas worship with form. It doesn't matter what mode of worship. What matters is they should have certain attributes. If they have these attributes, I call them greatest of yogis. I would like to add a corollary saying greatest of human beings. And one of them is Samniyam Indriya Gramam. Those who have control over their senses, which also includes the mind. Senses meaning mind also. See, mind is made of thought, and thought comes from the inputs from the Indriyas. So, when someone has perfect control over one's emotions and one's senses, one qualification for being called a yoga, he's practicing yoga. Now, Ashtanga yoga, or the yoga which is seen in Patanjali's, subscribes to this notion and gives us ways and means to build this up. Because, so, yama niyamas, controlling your habits. And middle path, no extremes. In fact, Krishna beautifully described this yoga is not for him who eats too much or eats too little, or sleeps too much or sleeps too little. There is no formula. It's an attitude. Right? He describes this. Then, and asanas are done for physical well-being, plus all asanas have something to do with your endocrine system. Not just muscle. Yoga asanas are not for muscle building. Of course, minimum muscle building is there, but more to do with building the muscle of the mind. Mind muscle. And then you have the dharana, dhyana, samadhi, and pranayam to adjust your nadis and the prana that circulates through them. So it's a scientific step-by-step way. Right, up to that. And without that, it is difficult to control your indriyas. So samniyam, the one who has control over his indriyas. But there have been people who have not done Ashtanga yoga, but who have had perfect control of the indriyas. You can't exclude them from this. What about the bhaktas who have not practiced, never stood on their heads? Well, I have. From the age of 10, I'm standing on my head. But there are. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa never practiced any physical yoga. So yoga is not just that. I'm trying to convey this. Okay. Then you come to the next quality which Krishna describes. Sarvatra samabuddhaya. One who through practice and understanding develops the capacity to keep his mind tranquil in the midst of all circumstances. No matter what the circumstances are, sarvatra sama buddhaya. The buddhi is kept sama. Okay, third quality, sarva bhuta hite rata, who has the welfare of all living beings in his heart. Includes human beings also, of course. But he says if these three qualities are there, that person I called a great yogi. And then he equates the word yogi with bhakta and says, Yaha bhakta same priya, such a bhakta is dear to me. You see, this yoga is much wider than just a couple of asanas and pranayama. It is the way by which, even according to Patanjali, the mind's thoughts are stilled. Chitta vritti nirodha is the definition. After saying atha yoga anushasanam, he says yogas chitta vritti nirodha. And note, no asanas are included in the Yoga Sutras. If you want to study, he mentions asana, saying sthira sukham asanam. But if you want to go, then you have to look at other books like Yoga Pradipika, Garanda Samhita, Shiva Samhita, Goraksha Shataka. There are other texts. So, yoga is basically a way of life by which you keep your mind tranquil. You don't have to run away from the world. Remember, it was preached in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. This battlefield of life is before us all the time. Staying here, can we keep our minds calm? When the mind is calm, it becomes the tarmac from which you take off to the higher levels of consciousness, the essence of being, understanding which the Vedas declared Amritasya Putraha, who sons of immortality. What great treasure. What else can somebody give to the world? What we have. Think about it. This is yoga.
Absolutely, Guruji. I think it's very, very insightful to get a far wider and a holistic perspective on this, on something which is as important as this. Thank you very much for sharing that. Guruji, in the spiritual realm, we often hear about the word truth. Now, could I ask you to share what exactly does one mean by truth, and how is it different from ordinary facts that we come across in our lives?
This is a thing which will take several satsangs, but since you asked me the question, I'll try to put it in as concise a way as I can. You may not succeed. Now, the ancient Vedic dictum, asato ma sadgamaya, right, means take me from the unreal to the real. Now, sat here means the truth. Satya is none other than the all-pervading Shivam. The Supreme Being is Satya, is the truth. When you say something is the truth, there is this daily truth and lie, which is different. Ultimate truth is that which is permanent. And therefore, this ultimate truth, Satya, is not different from Sat. You just have to add an Ya. It is Sat. It is the reality. Therefore, searching for that reality would take you from darkness to light. Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. And once you have touched that Sat, the reality, when I say Sat, it means the real as opposed to that which is here today and gone tomorrow, which is permanent. I don't subscribe to the theory that the world is an illusion. It's not an illusion. As long as it lasts, it is real. There I am with Madhva. As long as it lasts, it is real. But it is not permanent. Therefore, not real. What is here today is gone tomorrow. Therefore, when you find something that is existing forever, which is the Sat, as opposed to the Asat, which does not exist forever. And this Sat is also the essence of our being. Lucky for us. Good news. And when you touch, and you cannot explore it in the outside world, you have to explore it only from inside. And when you find this, an amsha of that Sat in your being, then you have found the truth. This is the truth of existence. And all the lives we lead, not only this life, many past lives, if you believe in it, are meant to finally find the Satya, find the truth. That is the ultimate truth. And that ultimate truth has been defined as saccidananda. This the reality Sat, it is of the nature of consciousness, Chit, not material. And its intrinsic quality is ananda, bliss. Not the ordinary bliss which comes and goes. This is not bliss, it's happiness. But that Veda describes as anantam anandam brahma, that anand that cannot end, and which is not created and therefore cannot be destroyed. And this is our essence. Swami Vivekananda once said that I am a socialist. People were astounded. How the Vedantin? He said, one reason is because half a loaf is better than none. And then he explained and he said, listen, I have a brand of Vedantic socialism, which I call. What is that? He said, I have my anubhava, my experience. It has also been told in the Vedas and the text, sacred texts, that inside every human being, living being and also human being. Living being cannot come face to face with what human being can. Be aware of it. Inside every human being, there is an amsha, a spark of the divine, supreme being. Right? In that case, if other human beings also have this spark, whether they know it or not, and therefore they're all equal. There's nobody who is unequal because we all sparks of the divine. He called it Vedantic socialism. So I have some friends who try to lean towards the red, and I tell them if Karl Marx had read the Upanishads, his ideas would have been different because when he says religion, he knows only the Semitic religions. He doesn't know any other.
Yeah.
If he had understood, he would have thought that religion, in the real sense of the term, is spiritual and that it is an inquiry into your true essence.
Yes.
His whole theory would have changed. And, I was born and brought up in Kerala. Nobody who goes to college in Kerala is free from a little bit of red coloring, generally.
Yeah.
Only thing is when I went about to go to the Himalayas, somebody dropped a little yellow into the red and it became orange. What can I do? It went off. When you drop yellow into red, what happens? Anyway, so that yellow I call as my spiritual understanding. And after all, red is the color of Shakti, the mother. Okay? All I'm saying is, therefore, your question about Satya, about the truth, is the essence of one's being. And this is what, since ancient times, the rishis have described. And this is our greatest gift to the world. I say we are teachers of the world because this is what we can offer to the world. Of course, I'm sure there was great technology here before. No question. It has been buried deep by the historians who deliberately wanted to hide it. But it was there. It's gone now. It's time to recover it. But the greatest discovery, which even Western science has not made, the discovery of the spiritual element in us. Atma Sakshatkara.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Guruji. In fact, this actually flows very well into what I wanted to ask you next. And that is about how the world views Bharat and also how Bharatiyas view the world. Now, we see that, like you mentioned, many ideas and technologies have actually flown from Bharat in history to the world. And yet a lot of it actually remains unacknowledged. And in some cases, our knowledge systems are also repackaged and repurposed in a very different way. And one could say that today, a large number of Indians look outside, particularly the West, for validation regarding anything. And this could range from anything from self-help to societal norms to the
I
way we
agree.
educate ourselves. Do you think people in India, particularly the youth again, need to pay greater attention to our civilization heritage?
It's not as if it's not happening. I see it happening in many places.
Yes.
Very young, educated, smart, intelligent people are beginning to realize this, no question. I must tell you about this validation problem.
Yes.
As early as the time of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, he was an illiterate, simple man. He could hardly sign his name. All wise men came and sat in front of him to learn. Why? Because his essence was the supreme, which is all pervading and understands everything. Now, he said something very interesting. One gentleman who is a Bengali Babu, Bengal was the capital of the British first,
Yes.
before it shifted to Delhi. So the English ideas and English superiority in cricket, etc., first came to Calcutta. I'm nothing against cricket, I'm just saying. I don't play, but one Bengali Babu comes there. He used to come many times to see Ramakrishna and says the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful book. It has to be read. So Thakur says, Sri Ramakrishna says, listen, this gentleman, I've been telling him for years that he should read the Bhagavad Gita. Now he is saying we should read the Bhagavad Gita. Some Angrez must have told him that it's a good book.
Yeah.
See this validation problem here.
Yeah.
They have to validate. Till Swami Vivekananda went to Chicago Parliament of Religions and got accepted, nobody cared for him here, except a small group of people who knew his spiritual birth. This is to be noted. But things are changing, I think. I meet a lot of young people who have pride in their own understanding, in their own culture, in their own discoveries. And I think we should also make them aware of this, so that they don't think that everything that comes from the West is good. Now, technology as we have today, like internet and digital technology, they are good. Use what is good, no harm. Otherwise, we won't be sitting like this face to face. Yes, but don't take that which is not good into us. Take what is useful, but don't make it the be-all and end-all of life. Why? Because we have deeper things to learn from our own country here, which, because of this, should not get neglected. And this is what, look, I am now on the faculty of the IIT Delhi. For the last 3 or 4 semesters, they have introduced the study of I give them online classes, discussions, classes, with students you have to interact, simply talking only. We started with a very innocuous topic but deep topic called exploring consciousness. And then I went from there to many students. Now the more are attending the classes. They are young scientists, technologists who are going to be the future of this country. Then I went from exploring consciousness to exploring consciousness through Upanishads. And the last semester we had was scientific yoga. I said, look, using your scientific instruments, it's possible to find out the achievements of yoga to some extent, to prove it. So, technology should be used where necessary. I'm not against learning of English because it is a link language in the world.
Yeah.
But I'm also of the opinion that to get what you were talking about, we need to introduce Sanskrit as a language in this country. It is the ancient language in which everything was written in those days. Not only religion, take the denominational aspect of it away. Science. Aryabhatta did not write religion in Sanskrit. Mathematics, astronomy. Kalidasa did not write any religious things in Sanskrit. He wrote great plays. The great Adi Kavi Valmiki wrote the Ramayana in Sanskrit, original. Valmiki Ramayana. Now, if the youngsters are not introduced to this language, they will not get to original source. So, since the Sanskrit grammar is very tough, even tougher than the German grammar, I would say introduce Lagu Sanskrita, which means spoken Sanskrit. Sanskrit. So people get and all the languages we speak in this country have some Sanskrit.
Yeah,
There are advocates of Sangam Tamil literature who say it is older than Sanskrit, we don't want Sanskrit, and their names are Sanskrit. There's one guy who's no more here now called Karuna Nidhi. Karuna is a Sanskrit word, Nidhi is a Sanskrit word.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely, sir. I think you summarized it so beautifully for us about what is changing and also what needs to change, both being very important. Speaking about Bharat and the world again, sir, do you think a world...
But your light is coming and going. I don't know why. What's happening? I see you sometimes, I don't see you. Okay.
Okay. Is it better now, sir?
Yeah. No. It was, when it comes, it is good. But when it goes off totally blank.
Oh, okay.
1 second, wait. Maybe something on our side. Wait a minute.
Sure, sir.
What's happening now?
Yeah, I just...
Just a minute. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Speaking about Bharat and the world again, sir, now, do you think a world more immersed in yoga can also raise its collective consciousness in a way that it could solve many of the problems today in the world, which seem very unsolvable otherwise? And also, I wanted to ask you about how all of this can happen, and what should be the vision for Bharat as it rises?
All the missions that we have across the world, Indian missions, apart from their diplomatic and political work, their cultural and spiritual sides should operate full-fledged. Like the IC, Indian Council of Cultural Research, ICCR, it is there in all countries. I would say that not only should they be doing cultural activity, which is all fine, introducing India through dance and music is wonderful, but also lay stress on the yogic and spiritual aspects. Then this can be shared with the world. They should invite as many people as possible who are interested, who are experts in this field. They are doing some way, but it should increase. Plus, Sanskrit should also be introduced in foreign universities. They do have. They can be encouraged further. And this, I'm not against foreign cooperation and collaboration. But the collaboration and cooperation should not go on the we are superior and you are inferior basis that comes from there. That should cease to exist. We should be at par. You can say this, that as of now, technologically you may be superior. Spiritually we know better. Can we combine these two and share? In fact, Swamiji said, Swami Vivekananda, his first mission was that he said, give them our spiritual treasures, take in return their material benefits, because right now we are not so well up in material benefits. Although at some time we should, and I think we will, become self-sufficient even in that. So the idea of 75 years of India becoming self-reliant, strong, all that is very good, but it should have the spiritual, adhyatmic essence at its core. This is what nobody else has given to the world. If this happens, this could be combined, things move forward. I envision a time when people will come here to learn things. There was a time when Nalanda had 3,000 students, when Huinsang was traveling from China, and they were learning Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, yoga, meditation, science, mathematics. Today, we go to Harvard. I'm not against going to Harvard. But why do we go? Because we don't have that kind of facility here. In spite of all our IIMs and IITs, that is not yet opened up. Of course, in the West, people would also think that maybe they don't have, but we have facilities. So I'm always have this dream that at some point in the future, people will come from there to learn from us. We are these teachers of the world. And if we forget that, then however much we advance, even economically, we have missed the essence.
Absolutely, sir. I think you've said it very well. I think we will and we are growing materially, and we will grow to greater heights. But I think it is our civilizational responsibility to keep our adhyatmic core at the very center.
Intact. Absolutely. And in the center.
Absolutely, sir.
Because it respects all humanity. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Where does it come from? From the Vedas. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha. Where does it come from? From the Vedas. That explains it.
And it's a beautiful vision, sir, that I think Bharat as an entire nation, as a civilization, should, and it's our civilizational responsibility to put this at the global stage and share this with all of humanity. And I think we have a great responsibility on our shoulders as all of us watching this.
Yes, especially young people like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir.
So I think it's time now for us.
Thank you so much, Guruji, for sharing so many words of wisdom with us. It is a delight. It is so enriching to hear you discuss so many topics, and we hope to have you again on our platform. I'm sure I have taken so much from this conversation, and I'm sure our viewers too have. And it's our privilege and honor to host you on the Festival of Bharat, sir. Namaste.
Thank you. Dhanyavad. Om Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much. And to our viewers, I would like to request you, please do subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and please do share this video, and we will be back with another such enriching conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Pranams to you, sir.
Dhanyavad. Ashirwad.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, Please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.